Before you get started for this exercise on building a story library, make sure you download or have a copy of the exercise instructions. Within these instructions, I'm giving you good examples that you can copy for your libraries that you'll create. You'll be creating two different libraries. One will be set up for a tabloid size, and the other will be set up for a broadsheet size. So in the end, you should be creating both of them, even though I'm only going to be showing you how to create one particular set of library. Also, when you create these, make sure you have exercise 2 and exercise 4 already finished. You want to have these finished so that you don't spend any extra time making unnecessary headlines or layouts, and you can already work with something you've already done. So let's jump in and get started. I've got my exercise 4, and this is where we've laid out the different photographs within our document. And we're going to use this as the basis for building our library. Remember, this one is we're using for the broadsheet, but you'll also need to open up one for the tabloid. To get started making a library, go up to File, down to New, and choose Library. If it asks, do you want to add something to your CC library, we're just going to say no and not add that. Next, we need to add a name to our library. Now, for my example, I'm working on a broadsheet, so I'm going to type the name broadsheet, make sure I spell it correctly, broadsheet library, and we're saving this as an INDL document. The L stands for library. I'm going to save mine to the desktop so I can save it. If you're working on the tabloid, this should be the tabloid library. We'll hit save, and this will open up a blank palette that we can use to save our information to. A library is a way of quickly and easily saving some pre-existing designs and layouts that you can drag on and drop in whenever you need them. To add something to the library, it's as simple as selecting what you've designed and adding on to it. The first thing I want you to do, if we look at our instructions, is to build a library for all of the different headlines that you should have. And there are 7 different styles of headlines. So for this one, I can see this is a banner style headline. I'm going to make a copy of it just so I don't accidentally reuse it. And I'm going to type in some dummy text. I like to use just capitals or random letters. Since that's a regular banner headline, I've got it selected. Go into your broadsheet library, click to add a new one, and then double click it to bring up the name. The name of this will be a headline banner. We don't have to add a description or any object type. We'll just keep it like this and say OK. Now that I've got a banner headline, let's go to the next one. This particular style could be a banner with a leading deck. So I could select both of those, click on the inside here, double click. This would be a banner with a 1-column deck. Let's go to the next one. This is a hammer style headline. Select it, click the new one, then double click, and then headline, hammer. We'll continue this until we have all 7 of the different styles of headlines already created and complete. And I can double click on each one of these. If I don't want to hit the create new, I can always click and drag onto here. And then I can double click it and add the name for this one, headline. And this one is a kicker style. You'll also need one for a slammer. You'll need one for a side saddle, and you'll need one for a raw wrap. Another thing I like to add while I've already got it in here is just a basic body copy. Now the body copy doesn't have to be divided up into any kind of columns. So all I'm going to do is just create a simple text box. I'm going to go up to type, and let's fill this in with some placeholder text. We'll select all, and then we'll use our paragraph style and make that the body copy paragraph style. Let's put a little bit more into it. Type, fill with placeholder text. Now that I've got some dummy text, I can add this to my Broadsheet Library, double click, body copy. Once you have all of your headlines created, let's go back to our instructions. On the next page, I want you to add a variety of different deck styles to your library. In my case, I've given you 3 different styles that are commonly used for different kinds of decks. So if we go back to our design, the first kind of style, I'll grab my text box, and I'll click and drag, and I'm just going to type out a simple sentence. I'll use this kind of as a small sans serif. So this is a simple deck that I am using for dummy text and copy. Simple sentence, doesn't have to say anything important. Now remember, a deck needs to be different in style from the headline and the body copy. So I'm going to highlight this. One of the most common styles of decks is to use a serifed italics. So for the style I'm going to use is Minion Pro Italic. And that's a pretty good size, although we could make it a little bit larger. We can always change it up later. Once I've got it selected, I'm also going to turn on my text wrap because most decks need to wrap around the body copy. So make sure this is selected. And then we can add this to our document. Double click. So this will be a deck italics. Let's do another one. I'll make a copy of my italic deck, select it. Another style is to have a boldface lead-in. So let's change this style back to Minion or Myriad Pro. Let's do Myriad Pro regular. And we'll lead in with the quote, boldface lead-in, colon space. So with these, usually the first couple of words will be nice and bold to attract your attention, and then it'll be followed with the simple text. It looks something like this. With this selected, we'll add that on to our library, and we'll call this deck bold face lead-in. And the final style that I'm giving you is one with a bullet point or a wingding lead-in. For this one, we'll get rid of our bold face, and instead of just typing a regular bullet point, let's add a special glyph inside of here. To find the glyphs, go up to Type, down to Glyphs, and this will show you all of the different characters within a specific font. The font that I like to use is Zap Dingbats, so down here we'll choose Zap Dingbats, and these characters tend to be the common kind of lead-ins. If you double click, we'll add this square to here. So double click, adds one to our text. We can close out our glyphs, and we'll even make it slightly smaller just to let it set. There we have 3 different styles, and let's save this one to our text. So double click and name it. This is called a deck with a bullet point lead. To be honest, the name of these don't really matter as long as it's something that you know the difference of. Another thing you can do within your broadsheet library or any library, if you don't want to see these as individual icons, you can click the upper top and list it either as a view or a large thumbnail view. Let's do list view. That way we can actually see what each of these things are. If I did large thumbnail, you get a little bit better preview of the name also. Whatever suits you best. Okay, so going back to this. Now that we've got a different style of decks, you should have at least 7 headlines, and as far as the number of decks go, you should have at least these 3 saved up. Next, we're going to create a variety of style of bylines. Bylines tell you who the article is by, who the author or the writer of it is. Within this, there's usually some common information. There's the name of the writer, their contact information, usually an email, their position or what their title is, and also what newspaper they're affiliated with. And you'll often see this done in different ways. In the examples I'm showing you, you can see each one of them definitely has their name. It also has what newspaper they may be working for. Sometimes they will list out how you can contact them, and sometimes they'll even have a photograph of themselves. Play around with the styles of these. Notice that I have a use of bold and italic. I have a use of both serif and sans serif. Sometimes I'll capitalize everything, and sometimes maybe I'll give it an outline. If you look at your local newspaper, you can find other styles and how they're done as well. So to make a couple of these, we need at least 4 different distinct styles. We'll jump back into here. And I usually like to make mine at least 1 column width. Whoops, let's make sure we choose our type tool. So I'll type in, all in the same line, by Homer. Let's make it much smaller, of course. Homer Simpson. Underneath that, say for this one, the Daily News, and that'll be the name of his newspaper. Now it's simply a time to play around with the styles of these. We can select them. Maybe we'll change up our leading, placing it back to auto. I'll let this one be centered, so it's centered up. And we'll have who he's working for to be in regular style and all caps. Maybe even make it a little bit smaller. Other things you can do is spread out the tracking of it. So there's one example of a byline. And this byline, of course, it does need to be wrapped around, so let's turn on wrapping for it, clicking right here. And then we can add this byline into our broadsheet library. Double click on this. We'll just call it byline 1. To make another style, we'll say, let's do this style. Homer Simpson, we don't even have to use the word by. We'll have it all left align. Let's put his contact information below it. So we'll do Homer at thedailynews.com. Maybe this will be italicized and done smaller. Whoops. And let's do that in all caps as well. We'll put his name in underline. And let's select this and bring up our leading. Get a little bit closer in. That's a pretty good style. Again, we'll select it, drag it into here, double click, and we'll call this byline 2. Oops, not 21. If you want to add a photograph of someone, so let's jump into our web browser. We'll do a quick search for really any dummy image. You don't even have to have a picture to work with. I just use this as a good example. You can have a blank image to pull from. But let's copy this. Jump back in. We'll work with an existing byline. We'll take that, grab a picture box, and paste him into that picture box. Again, to scale it down quickly, you can choose these auto fits and that'll put him in there nicely. Remember to hold down Shift and Command, and that will let you scale down a picture. And we'll make him fit with his name. This time, let's have his name be in italics, left align, and the Daily News, we'll put that also left align. This will be bold. All I want you to do is to play around with the look and feel of all of this. Later on, we can change it up, but I want you to be satisfied with how your newspaper would look. If you were working for a real newspaper, they would really already have these designed, or they would make them designed for each of their writers. Byline 3. You need to have at least 4 different styles of bylines, and you can use these bylines as your examples to pull from. Once you've got 4 bylines, now let's pull in 4 pull quotes. A pull quote is used to draw attention to 1 or 2 quotes or sentences found within the article. And they should be something that has a good contrast with the body copy that's surrounding it. It should be something that really draws your eye and attention to what's being said. And again, I want 4 different styles of pull quotes, and I'm giving you 3 examples that you could copy for your design. They can include pictures of people, they can include different styles of lettering for both the quote and the person's name, or they can just be the quote by itself. So let's design this first one. If I want to do a pull quote, again, I'm going to try to keep it within 1 column, but again, you can change it up to be whatever you need it to be. I like to start off with just a solid white box, and you'll see why in just a second. So we'll make our fill color paper, our stroke color none. With a solid box, I can turn on text wrap, and everything that I need will be wrapped around that. So if I was to place that box inside of my body copy like this, you can see already the text is wrapping around this box. And I don't have to worry about anything else. Inside of it, let's do some designing. I'll add a little line to the top. We'll make it a little bit thicker. Maybe drop the tint of it. These can be in color or black and white. I do recommend at least having both because you don't know what page it'll be on. And if I wanted to add some text, let's do some dummy text off to the side. We'll do a quote. Let's do it small serifed. Do a quote again. And maybe we'll have this quote be italicized and a little bit smaller. Let's go for bigger. All right, so I've got the quote set up. Now here's a common problem that you may run into. Remember, I've got text wrap turned on with this. Well, if I take my text and I place it, going the wrong way, and I try to place it on top of the blank box, it's going to push it out of the way. It's going to be wrapping this text that's inside of it. And that's not what I want to do. To turn off or to ignore text wrapping, you can go to Object, down to Text Frame Options, and choose Ignore Text Wrap. Notice now when I do that, this allows me to put my text on top of a box that's got text wrap. And that definitely comes in handy when you have certain text that needs to fall in a structure that you've already set up. I'll also turn off hyphenation for this one just for the sake of it. Okay, let's also add the person's name to that quote. So we'll do Lisa, let's do a small, oops. Said by Lisa Simpson, and her title would be below her. Maybe her title won't be in bold, but it will be in italicized. Let's set that off to the right-hand side. That looks good. Again, if I try to place this on top of a box that has text wrapping, I need to go to Object, Text Frame Options, and I need to choose Ignore Text Wrap to make it show up. And there you see we have a simple and quickly made pull quote that I can use. All I'm going to do now is to select everything that made up the pull quote and then drag it into my design and give it a new name. So pull quote 1, and there it is saved for this one. Remember, you need to design 4 different pull quotes, and you can use these as your setup. Let me show you how I rounded off the edges of this particular pull quote. To start off, grab myself a text box, and I'm going to type in some dummy text. Let's make it much smaller. We'll fill in the color of our text. I'm going to fill it with black, but then drop the black down to a tint of about 10 to 20%. That looks good. To make the text centered inside of it, select the text box. We'll go up to Object, Text Frame Options, and I'm going to add some text inset. Inset spacing adds a little bit of a margin inside of your text box. We'll say OK to that. Next, in order to round off the edges, select your box. The quick way to round it off is to look for this design up at the very top. This part will show the different edges you can have, and so you can do rounded, and this number will round off all of the edges. So that's a quick and easy way of doing that. If you want to further customize this, you can select the box, go to Object, and choose Corner Options. With Corner Options selected, zoom in, you can tell it exactly what size the corners should be for each one. So I'm going to unlink them. And let's say I want this bottom corner to not be rounded. So I'm going to choose this bottom corner, and we can set it to none. Maybe this top corner will be rounded a lot more. So now you can see this is different from the others. When we say OK, this is what we're left to work with. Again, let's turn on our text wrapping. Then I'll save this one into my design. Double click, full quote 2. Once you're finished, the library that you created, both for your broadsheet and for your tabloid, should automatically be saved. And you don't have to save this with your template that you're using. If I look on my desktop, this is what I have. This libcc is a InDesign library. I can share this with other computers, or I can open it up in other documents, and it's treated kind of like a separate document by itself. You're going to create a library for a tabloid and upload that to Moodle, and then you're going to create a library for your broadsheet and upload that to Moodle. The main difference is the size of the columns and the information and the size of the text that's on the inside as well. Once we're done, we're going to start using these to place them inside of our different layouts for the next set of exercises and for our final project.